Can you imagine what would happen if, in the middle of a peaceful mass, with the church full of people seeking peace and comfort in their faith, something completely unexpected and shocking shattered all the serenity? I'm not talking about a small incident, but an invasion that challenged what seemed most sacred in that place. And one person's reaction completely changed the course of everything that was expected. Get ready for a story that, despite seeming incredible, shows us how true faith, forgiveness and understanding can appear in the most unlikely places and in the most difficult moments, turning our way of thinking upside down. Before we dive into this story, I want to ask you, write right now in the comments the names of people and relatives that you know are going through difficulties and need a special prayer. We will include all of these names in our main prayer with the rosary, asking for divine intercession for them. Leave the names below in the comments. It was a Sunday morning, a day like so many others, in a church that was in a sunny city in California. The 9 o'clock Mass, the busiest, was at its peak. The pews were filled with faithful of all ages, families gathered together, elderly people with rosaries in their hands, young people with attentive faces. The sunlight gently entered through the stained glass windows, painting the interior of the temple with sacred tones of blue, red, and gold. At the altar, the priest, with his calm and serene voice, led the celebration, speaking about love, hope, and the importance of living the Word of God in everyday life. The atmosphere was one of profound peace and recollection, a tranquil refuge amidst the hustle and bustle of the world outside. No one could have imagined that, in a few moments, all that stillness would be broken by an event that would test the faith and capacity for compassion of all those present, in a way that would forever be etched in the memory of that community. The congregation participated actively, answering prayers, singing hymns, immersed in the liturgy, feeling the spiritual presence that seemed to envelop each person in that sacred place. Suddenly, in the middle of a moment of silent prayer, a loud noise erupted from the back of the church. The large wooden doors, which were usually closed during the celebration, were suddenly opened. All eyes turned to the entrance, in a mixture of surprise and curiosity. In the portal, standing against the sunlight that was coming in, the figure of a man appeared. His appearance contrasted starkly with the order and serenity of the place. His clothes were old and torn, his hair and beard were disheveled, and in his eyes there seemed to be a mixture of pain, confusion, and perhaps even anger. He seemed disoriented, perhaps under the influence of some substance, or simply lost in his own suffering. A murmur of astonishment ran through the church. Some people shrank back in their pews, others stood up slightly, ready to react or to protect themselves. That man, clearly a homeless person, was breaking the silence and peace abruptly, and the question in the air was, what did he want there? Without saying a word, the man began to walk down the central aisle of the church. Each step echoed in the tense silence that had taken over the place. People instinctively moved away, their eyes fixed on him, not understanding his movements or intentions. He did not appear to be asking for help or money, as some might have expected. His walk was purposeful, as if he had a clear goal in mind. He headed straight for the side of the altar, where, fixed to the wall, was a beautiful and ancient statue of Our Lady, beloved by the entire community, a symbol of devotion and faith for many. With surprising strength, the man grabbed hold of the statue. There was a moment of hesitation in the congregation, some thinking that he might pray or touch it. But what followed was an act of pure destruction that left everyone petrified. With a violent pull, he ripped the statue from the wall. The sound of the mortar and plaster coming loose was agonizing. Then he hurled the image against the stone floor of the church. The impact was devastating. A loud, dry sound echoed through the temple, followed by the sound of shards scattering. The statue of Our Lady, once whole and venerated, now lay in pieces on the floor. The initial shock gave way to a wave of intense and varied reactions among the faithful. Suppressed cries of horror and indignation were heard. Many rose from their seats, their faces red with rage and bewilderment. "What does he think he's doing? This is sacrilege. Call the police," were phrases whispered furiously. The peace that had reigned moments before was completely replaced by a feeling of violation and outrage. People looked at the pieces of the statue with pain, as if something very valuable had been brutally attacked. The first reaction, very human and understandable, was to protect the sacred, to expel the invader who dared to desecrate that space and destroy such an important symbol of their faith. The atmosphere became heavy, charged with tension and resentment against the man who had caused such damage. In the midst of all this chaos, the priest, who was at the altar about to begin the final part of the Mass, stopped. He did not shout, he did not run for help, nor did he immediately join in the congregation's outrage. Instead, he stood still for a few moments, taking in the scene unfolding before him. The disheveled, panting man standing next to the remains of the statue on the ground, and the congregation, a multitude of shocked and angry faces. His gaze did not seem focused solely on the destruction or the intruder, but on something deeper. He seemed to be trying to understand, seeking to see beyond the act of violence to perhaps find a reason behind it. While the church was buzzing with reactions, the priest maintained a posture of surprising calm, a serenity that contrasted sharply with the commotion around him. He turned slightly toward the man, his expression serious but without showing fear or immediate condemnation. And then, in a gesture that no one expected, the priest calmly stepped down from the altar. He did not make a speech about sacrilege, he did not reprimand the man, nor did he order him to be removed. Instead, he walked slowly toward the intruder. The man, who seemed ready to face hostility, looked at the priest suspiciously. When he got close to him, instead of making any accusation, the priest did something that completely silenced the congregation. In a soft and compassionate voice, he said, "My son, why is there so much pain in your heart that you acted like this? What afflicts you to the point of breaking something that is important to us?" He did not speak of the destroyed statue first, but rather of the pain and suffering he saw in the man's eyes and attitude. He extended his hand, not to hold or punish, but in a gesture of offering, of welcome. The entire congregation fell into absolute silence, shocked by the attitude of their leader. They expected fury, justice, and protection of their property, but they received a living example of compassion and mercy at the most unexpected moment. The man's reaction to the priest's unexpected kindness was one of confusion. He seemed unsure how to respond to this calm and compassionate approach, so different from the anger he had probably expected. The priest continued to speak to him in a low tone, offering help, asking if he was hungry, if he needed a place to stay, if there was anything the priest could do to ease his suffering. He crouched down with the man, even amid the pieces of the broken statue, showing that, at that moment, the person mattered more than the object. The congregation watched the scene, some with tears in their eyes, others still processing what was happening. The initial anger began to give way to deep reflection. The priest, with his attitude, was preaching without words a powerful sermon on the true meaning of faith, that it is not just in symbols and physical structures, but in the ability to see and love others, especially those who are hurt, lost, and acting in ways we do not understand. He demonstrated that mercy can and should prevail over judgment and indignation, transforming a moment of profanation into an unforgettable lesson in humanity and living faith. This shocking story makes us think deeply about our own faith and how we live it in our daily lives. How many times in our lives do we judge people by their appearance or superficial attitudes, without trying to understand the pain or history that led them to act that way? How many times do we react with anger, fear, or resentment when faced with situations that take us out of our comfort zone, instead of seeking the understanding and compassion that the priest showed us? His attitude reminds us that true preaching is not only in what we say, but in how we act, especially in moments of greatest challenge. It is a call to live our faith more authentically, praying without ceasing not only for ourselves, but for the whole world, seeking peace in our hearts even in the midst of tribulations, forgiving those who offend us, remembering that we are all flawed, having more faith in trials, trusting that God is in control, and being instruments for more people to find the path, starting with our own daily conversion. And speaking of prayer and interceding for those in need, if you haven't yet left the names of people and relatives who need prayer in the comments, write them now. We will include all of them in our main prayer with the Rosary, asking for divine grace for each of them. This story offers us a different perspective on what is sacred and how we should react when the sacred, in its various forms, seems to be violated. The priest's attitude forces us to look within and ask, how would we react? What did you think of this story and, especially, of the priest's attitude? Leave your honest opinion in the comments below. I really want to know how this story touched you and what it awakened in you. Your participation is very important to us. If you liked the video, if the message brought you any reflection or peace, please leave your like to help us reach more people with this message of faith and hope. And if you are not yet part of our community, subscribe to the channel right now and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, stories and reflections that we have prepared with love for you. Thank you very much for watching until the end. May peace and understanding always be with you.